In the last video, we talked about value. Related to value is color. What they have in common is they are both dealing with light. So color is wholly dependent on light. It does change depending on the amount of the type, the quality of light that there is. When we're talking about color, we talk about hue, saturation, and brightness. So the hue is basically the name of the color. Hue can be, your reds, your greens, your yellows, and your blues. Primary, I'm sure most of you know what that is. Primary are the colors that cannot be created by mixing. They just come the way they come, and those, of course, are red, yellow, and blue. I'm sure you already know that. Secondary colors happen when you mix two primaries, and that's how we get orange, violet, and green. And tertiaries happen when you mix a primary and a secondary. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So let's just take a look at what all of that looks like. Let's look at this color wheel right here. This is your standard, color wheel. There's lots of different ways of understanding color, but this is the most typical one, where you have 12 different colors with yellow at the top, 12 o'clock, if you will, red at 4 o'clock, and blue at 8 o'clock. Those are your three primaries, and we can see them demonstrated right here. Halfway between each primary, at 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 6 o'clock, we have our secondaries, orange, green, and violet, which of course happen when you mix two primaries. Red and yellow combined make orange, right? So what happens when you mix a primary with a secondary, you get a tertiary color. And I have the tertiary colors right here. And these would be yellow-orange, red-violet, blue-violet, blue-green, and green-yellow, or yellow-green, okay? Colors do have temperature. We have warm and cool colors, and I think it's pretty easy to understand. Your warm colors are the colors we associate with things like fire, your reds and your yellows and your oranges. Our cool colors we associate with things like grass and water, our greens and our blues, and sometimes purples. Just purple can lean a little warm or a little cool depending on how much blue and red are in it. So complementary colors are opposite each other on the color wheel. They're as opposite as they can be. So we have three color combinations: red and green, yellow and violet, blue and orange. These colors are so different from one another that when they're shown side by side, they really, really contrast. And I'll just give you a little example of that. I am wearing a purple shirt, one of my favorite colors, I have to say, and I have a yellow knife here. Look at how that yellow knife just jumps out from my shirt. These two colors could not be less similar. Okay, so that's what happens when you put, two complements together. They tend to not contrast. They tend to contrast a whole lot. Here's another example. I'll put some purple next to the purple. Not a whole lot of contrast, right? And then if I put like a red next to the purple, you can see my Coke can, but it doesn't contrast the way the yellow knife does. Okay. We talked about tints and shades in the last video, so just as a little reminder, when you have color in its pure form, it's the most vibrant, it's the most saturated. You can add white to it to lighten it, and that creates a tint. You can add black to a color to darken it, and that's called a shade. And one of the things that's really nice about adding black to a color is a lot of times you can get some really beautiful earth tones that way. Saturation is the vibrance of a color, and just again, let me show you my yellow knife. That is a pure yellow. Okay, if I wanted to tone this yellow down, I could add white or black to it, but I could also add gray to it. And that would, all of those things would reduce its saturation. So pure color we call very intense, very high chroma or high saturation. But when colors are muted, we call them lower reduced intensity or reduced saturation. We use these words interchangeably. Okay, let's take a look at how Paul Cézanne in his painting is using warm and cool colors and also complementary colors to create contrast and to get his focal point to jump out at the viewer. So you see that he's got mostly cool colors in the background, the blues and the greens, but he wants you to really see that orange. You know, he wants to, I guess they're pears, kind of pears, lemons, oranges, kind of hard to tell, but they're all in the warm colors. They're all in those, you know, yellows and oranges. So since blue and orange are opposites, it creates quite a bit of contrast, and those orange pieces of fruit just kind of pop off the painting, just like my yellow knife popped off against my shirt. Let's see, did we talk about analogous colors yet? I'm going to back up because I think I forgot to talk about analogous colors, didn't I? I just skipped right over them. I sure did. Okay. Analogous colors are colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. They also kind of go along with color temperature to some degree. You know, the yellow, red, and orange are all near each other on the color wheel, as are the blues and the greens. We get some warm and some cool when we have the analogous down at this end of the color wheel. But analogous colors means it's a painting or you know, some other art form that has just colors that are near each other on the color wheel. Monochromatic paintings have variations of just a single color, and I'll try to show you some examples of that. Okay, so we could say the background of this painting, we have analogous colors because those blues and greens are very similar. And then we have the analogous colors of the reds and the oranges in this one. Okay, I wanted to show you a painting that had less intensity, less saturation. This is El Greco's painting, The View of Toledo. And he's got the cool analogous color scheme of green and blue, but he's added a lot of black and gray into the paint in order to create this kind of ominous, almost foreboding feeling of this storm rolling in. You know, almost looks a little bit like an omen. And I'd like to show you an example of a monochromatic or mostly monochromatic painting made with tints of a color. This is Paul Cézanne, and he's painted this cathedral mostly in an orange color with a lot of white added to it to create a tint. And finally, I want to show you a painting by Paul Klee where he's using both really saturated colors and also a lot of very low saturation colors. So, you know, the two squares that really should be popping out to you are these two reds right here. Everything else he's added black and gray to make the squares less saturated. So these are the terms that you might want to keep in mind. I've got a PowerPoint available for you to go back and review. There's an awful lot of terminology having to do with color, but it's also a lot of fun.